Haunting secrets. How a black maid saved a billionaire's son from devastating grief at midnight. The clock struck midnight, and the air was thick with secrets. Shadows danced across the walls of the old mansion, where whispers floated like ghosts around the opulent rooms, and one man's grief threatened to swallow him whole. Edward Mercer, the billionaire's only son, was deep in despair, haunted by loss, teetering on the edge of madness. He paced like a caged animal, the polished floorboards creaking under his weight. The moonlight barely pierced the heavy drapes, casting eerie silhouettes that seemed to reach for him or perhaps to warn him. In this house of wealth and privilege where every detail was meant to dazzle, something darker lurked. It was said the mansion had a history of tragedy shrouded in mystery. Years ago, a maid had mysteriously disappeared, leaving only a veil of sorrow and unanswered questions behind. A black maid, they whispered, who once tended to the Mercer family like an unseen guardian. Was she still here? Did her spirit linger in the corners, watching over those who remained? Everything took a bizarre turn that night, triggered by the sudden, unsettling sound of the door creaking open, and then, a figure stepped through. It was Lila, the new maid. She carried with her an air of calm that seemed almost supernatural. Her skin shone like polished mahogany under the dim lights, and her eyes held a secret, a spark of something unexplainable. She had come to work, of course, but something felt off. Why had she arrived at this hour, just when shadows grew thicker? Edward paused, his breath catching. Her presence stirred something deep within him, a feeling he could not name. He felt a glimmer of hope, warm and strange, creeping in around the edges of his misery. Could she actually help him? The weight of his grief had been a relentless companion, but now, with Lila's quiet strength filling the space, he felt something shift. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As midnight loomed, Lila made her way towards him, every step deliberate, her voice low but filled with purpose. I know what you're going through, she began, and her words wrapped around his heart like cold steel. There's a way to heal, but we must confront the darkness that haunts this house. Edward swallowed hard, the lump in his throat burning. What did she know? What darkness? His pulse raced, adrenaline rushing through him. The air crackled with tension as he leaned closer, eager to learn the truth. Suddenly, a door slammed shut somewhere in the house, sending a jolt through both of them. Edward's heart leaped into his throat. Was it his imagination, or did Lila's demeanor change? A flicker of fear passed in her eyes, betraying the calm facade she tried to maintain. This was no mere coincidence. There existed a deeper mystery here, one that intertwined the lives of a grieving son and a maid who might just hold the key to unraveling secrets long buried. What was waiting for them in the dark halls of the Mercer mansion? Edward felt the weight of that question, heavy and unyielding, as they stood on the precipice of a revelation that could change everything. The clock continued to tick, pushing them both toward an unknown fate. Lila spoke again, her voice a whisper woven with urgency. We aren't alone. They're watching. Her gaze darted toward the shadows, eyes wide, reflecting both fear and determination. Edward felt a chill race down his spine. Was it just the remnants of his grief, or was there truly something else present in the room with them? He tried to call out, but the words stuck in his throat. Images of his mother flashed in his mind, a warm smile that could light up any room, now replaced by a haunting void. But Lila's presence pulled him back from that dark abyss. Tell me what to do, he urged, desperate for direction, for hope. The spirits here, Lila started, her voice trembling slightly. They've been trapped. They linger, waiting for closure. We must listen to their stories. Edward felt a strange sense of connection between them. It was as if Lila knew the depths of his pain, not just from the loss of his mother but also from the shadows that haunted his every thought. "Can you handle the truth?" she asked, searching his face with steely intensity. Before he could answer, the temperature in the room dropped, a gust of cold air swirling around them. The once tight bond of their shared moment suddenly ripped apart as the house groaned under an unseen weight. Edward's eyes were drawn to a distant corner of the room where shadows coalesced and twisted, forming shapes that felt too familiar, too tangible. "Remember," Lila urged, taking his hand in hers, warmth flowing in stark contrast to the chill. "You're stronger than your grief. Let us face this together." Despite the palpable fear coursing through him, Edward nodded, ready to step into the unknown. With a deep breath, Lila led him toward the darkness, her voice steadying his racing heart. "There must be something here. A message. A sign." Edward swallowed hard, acutely aware that every step might lead them to either clarity or danger. As they crept forward, the mansion seemed to breathe around them, the distinct creaks and groans echoing against the silence like ominous warnings. They reached a door at the end of the hall, the wood ancient with age and whispers of the past. Lila turned to meet his gaze. "This is where it happened." Before she could finish, the door swung open with a deafening bang, revealing a dimly lit room beyond. Dust motes hung in the air like tiny stars, and the furniture was draped in white sheets, seeming to cry out for recognition, for remembrance. Edward's heart raced as he took in the sight, familiar yet foreign. This was his childhood playroom, but now it felt like a tomb lined with echoes of laughter long vanished. In the center of the room stood an old trunk, its locks rusted and worn. Lila stepped forward hesitantly, pointing toward it. Maybe this will help us understand why they're still here." Anxiety gnawed at Edward. What if the contents of that trunk unleashed more than just memories? What if it contained the very essence of the pain that had plagued him? Lila turned to him, her eyes dark with concern. "We have to open it, Edward. We can't run from our past." Before he could respond, the lights flickered, plunging them into semi-darkness. A soft, sorrowful sound escaped from inside the trunk, mingling with the whispers of the mansion. Edward's breath hitched. "What was that?" he gasped, adrenaline flooding his veins. As Lila reached for the lid, Edward sensed the air thickening, tension crackling like static. "Wait." He managed, but it was too late. The lid creaked open, and with it, they stared into the abyss of their shared past, a past that was determined to reveal its secrets or perhaps consume them whole. What awaited them within that weathered trunk? The chance for hope flickered, a candle fighting against a storm, as the whispers grew louder. What truths would they unearth in the dark? And could they survive whatever lay ahead? Edward's mind raced as the trunk slowly opened, its creaking hinges unlocking not just wood but memories, fears, and secrets long buried. Dust swirled lazily in the dim light, mixing with the palpable tension that clung to the air like a thick fog. As the lid finally surrendered to Lila's hand, the faint sound of whispers faded, replaced by an eerie silence that hung heavily between them. Peering inside, Edward's heart pounded. The trunk was filled with old photographs, brittle with age, and letters tied together with a fraying ribbon. But the most alarming sight was a delicate porcelain doll, its glassy eyes staring straight ahead, devoid of any warmth. It was identical to the one he used to play with as a child, one that once brought him comfort, now sending chills down his spine. Lila reached for a photograph that was half buried beneath the letters. As she pulled it into the light, Edward's breath hitched again. It was a picture of his mother, smiling broadly, her eyes sparkling with love. But next to her stood a shadowy figure, barely discernible but undoubtedly watching, an inexplicable presence that sent a shiver through him. "Who is that?" Lila whispered, her voice shaking slightly. Edward leaned closer, his thoughts racing. The figure looked familiar, yet entirely off. "I don't know," he replied softly, barely above a whisper. The atmosphere thickened, as if the very walls were closing in. A cold wind whipped through the room, and just as quickly, memories flooded back to Edward: the joy of his mother's laughter, the warmth of her embrace, and then the harrowing sadness of her absence. Lila held out the photo to him, her expression torn between hope and dread. "We need to find out who this is. Maybe they hold the key to what happened to help them find peace. And us too." "I can't," Edward sputtered, his hands trembling. The overwhelming weight of loss surged within him, threatening to drown him in sorrow. "What if this pulls us further down? What if it opens a door we can't close?" But Lila's gaze was firm, unyielding. "We can't shrink back now. Remember what we came here for. We're stronger together. But we have to dive into this abyss, Edward." The trunk began to vibrate softly, as if it were alive, resonating with the shared pain stored within. Edward's racing heart matched its rhythm, and as Lila leaned closer, he felt her warmth radiate, anchoring him against the tempest of emotions swirling around him. "Let us see what else is in there," Lila urged, her voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. Edward felt torn, yet something deeper stirred within him. A desire to understand, a need to confront the shadows that loomed over his life. With a fortified resolve, he nodded, moving closer to the trunk. As he reached in, his fingers brushed against the letters. He pulled one out, the paper yellowed and fragile, the ink faded but still legible. The words leapt out at him, heavy with secrets. "I am sorry for what I have done." Before he could read further, the lights abruptly flickered off, plunging them into darkness. The whispers returned, louder this time, swirling around them like a tempest. Edward's chest tightened, panic flashing through him. "We need to get out," he gasped, but Lila gripped his arm. "No. We can't leave now. We must face it." The shadows danced around them, growing denser, swirling like a storm. Edward glanced at the trunk, realizing all he had ever feared was right in front of him. The truth of his past, the grief that gnawed at his insides. This was where it would all lead. The whispers crescendoed, reaching a frantic pitch. "Edward, let us in," they taunted, a chorus of voices suffused with pain and longing. Lila's eyes blazed with determination as she pulled him closer. "Promise me no matter what happens, we uncover the truth together." The urgency in her voice cut through the oppressive dark. He nodded, the oath settling in his heart. Just then, a shadow lunged from the corner, an icy grip snatching Lila's hand. Edward's throat tightened as he watched, unable to move. What secret had they awakened? What would it reveal, and who or what were they truly confronting? The darkness deepened around them, and in that fragile moment teetering between hope and terror, Edward realized, they were on the cusp of uncovering not just the spirits trapped in this house, but their own buried emotions. And there was no turning back now. What awaited them would either break them or bind them closer than ever. The shadows in the room twisted and writhed, and Edward felt like they were pulling him into a vortex. Lila's grip on his arm tightened as the thin veneer of the real world warped around them. Her eyes were wide with a mix of fear and determination, and the pulse of his heart matched the frantic whispers echoing around them. "Edward!" she screamed, fighting against the grip that had seized her hand. "We have to stay together." He could feel the heat of her skin at his side, a tether to reality, but the darkness gnawed at him, whispering secrets he wasn't ready to face. The trunk vibrated violently, as if it could sense their uncertainty. Edward's breath hitched as he realized he might lose her. The icy grip that held Lila began to pull her away, dragging her toward the congealed mass of shadow in the corner. Panic surged within him, he lunged forward, desperate. "Lila!" His voice was raw, splitting the air like glass. As he reached for her, he felt a strange warmth radiate from the trunk, beckoning him closer. The porcelain doll inside stared like a sentinel, its glassy eyes locked onto his. The irony twisted his gut. What had once brought him comfort now felt like a curse, a vessel of memories bittered by loss. "Lila, fight it. We need to pull together," he shouted, a frantic plea aimed not just at her, but at the unseen force pulling at them, trying to tear them apart. With gritted teeth and renewed resolve, Lila yanked her hand back, gasping as the grip loosened just enough for her to regain some footing. "I want to let go," she declared, breathing hard, eyes fierce. "We are not their prisoners." Edward's heart raced as he finally felt the pulse of the trunk synchronize with the fear rising in his chest. The whispers ebbed slightly, almost as if surprised by their resolve. Sensing the shift, he glanced down at the letter he had dropped earlier. "I am sorry for what I have done." It began to burn with a new urgency, flickering under the weight of truth. He bent low to retrieve it, uncaring for the shadows curling around his feet. The words wrote themselves in his mind as the air shifted. Who had written the letter? What had they done? He felt Lila's presence beside him again, steady and reassuring as their hands brushed together, forming an inseparable knot that it was now or never. They had to confront whatever darkness wanted them so desperately to listen. Edward turned the letter over and found more text hidden on the back, the script sharp and defined. "The past holds the key, find me in the silence." "What?" Lila whispered, peering over his shoulder. Her brow furrowed. "What does it mean?" Edward didn't know, but the urgency in her voice sent chills straight through him. "Maybe this is it." Suddenly, the whispers crescendoed once again, rushing around them like a wild wind. "We're here." The voices screeched. "Join us, Edward." "Lila." They coiled tighter, demanding their attention. "No!" he shouted, clenching the letter tightly. "We are here for the truth, not to be lost in your darkness." The shadows recoiled momentarily, as though his defiance had taken them by surprise. The vibrations of the trunk intensified, rising to a deafening roar, demanding to be heard. Edward squeezed Lila's hand. "Whatever this is, we're in it together." Before they could process the weight of their resolve, the trunk erupted open wider than before, and a glowing light spilled out, casting silhouettes that danced around the room, wild and frenzied. "Edward! Lila, come to the light!" With a gasp, they stepped back, hearts pounding in unison. The atmosphere shifted yet again, the oppressive heaviness replaced by a beckoning warmth mixed with the fear of what lay ahead. Could they unravel the secrets woven so tightly through their familial history? As the light pulsed with the rhythm of their hearts, a figure began to materialize, forming from the shadows, combining presence and memory. Too familiar, too haunting. What was that? Lila breathed, fear and uncertainty blending together in her voice. Edward's throat tightened as he focused on the figure. Then he recalled the photograph, the shadowy presence beside his mother. Was it possible that whatever spirit they confronted would reveal answers long buried? He didn't know if they were ready, but they had crossed a threshold. Whatever awaited on the other side of the light would either fulfill or destroy them. "Stay close," he murmured, struggling to breathe as he stared into the glowing luminescence. In that fleeting moment, before their steps took them into the unknown, Edward understood this: the truth was a two-edged sword. Whatever truth awaited them could cut deeper than the darkest fear. And the very whisper of the past now called louder than ever, promising answers and demanding sacrifice. They took a step forward, hearts clenching. What if the shadows weren't finished with them yet? The light enveloped Edward and Lila like a warm embrace, but it was too long before the comfort turned to dread. The glowing figure rippled, revealing a face that was achingly familiar. Edward's breath quivered in his throat. It was his mother. The soft features he remembered from childhood were now distorted, draped in a sheen of otherworldly light. "Mom?" His voice cracked, uncertainty rippling through him. He wanted to rush forward, to feel the warmth of her arms. But fear rooted him in place, the shadows buzzing around them like angry bees. "Edward." Her voice drifted like smoke through the air, rich yet sorrowful. "You have to listen, time is of the essence." The opposition churned louder. "Join us," whispered the shadows, threatening to drown out her soft plea. Lila pressed closer to him, her eyes darting from the figure to the swirling mass. "Tell us what to do," Lila shouted, her voice brave, but Edward could see her trembling. "You lead us out of this." "Focus, my child," she said, glancing at Lila with an unsettling mixture of recognition and sorrow. "The truth is layered, it must be unearthed with courage. The letter it holds the key to your future." Mounting terror clenched Edward's chest. His hands gripped the letter tightly, the parchment heating against his palm, as if it were alive. "But what if it leads us into darkness?" Mom's image faltered then reformed, her face twisting in pain. "The light reveals, but the shadows conceal. You must decide who you trust." "No!" he screamed, panic surging. "I don't understand." As he spoke, a cold wind swept through the room, raising goosebumps on Lila's arms. The shadows shrieked, enraged by his defiance. "Foolish mortals! You cannot escape the past." In that moment, Edward saw it, the swirling tendrils of shadow weren't just threats, they were memories, twisted and corrupted, reaching out as if wanting him to join them, to become part of their darkness. He felt Lila squeeze his hand tighter, anchoring him in reality as she whispered fiercely, "We have to trust her." "Do you believe in what she says?" he asked, searching her eyes for reassurance. "Yes," she shouted. "Whatever these shadows are trying to keep hidden, it's our time now. We owe it to your mother." The light flickered, responding to their growing resolve. "Fight back," his mother urged, her voice growing clearer through the tumult. Edward's heart raced as he remembered the words on the letter. The truth was buried, waiting for the right moment to surface. "Okay," he said, his voice firm. "We'll find the truth. Together." The shadows hissed, recoiling from the power in their declaration. The light surged brighter, illuminating more of the room, but with it came images, fractured scenes of his family, moments filled with laughter and love that twisted into dark grief, secrets unraveled beneath the weight of haunting betrayal. "We need to dig deeper," Lila stated, her voice steadier now. "Let the light guide us through the nightmares." "Mom!" Edward called out, eliciting a wave of flickering shadows that pulsed at his feet. "What do we do?" "I cannot linger," she said, the glow of her form beginning to fade. "You must find me in the silence. The answers lie in what happened in this very room." Her image dissolved into the luminous mist, and Edward felt the twinge of loss wash over him, even as the light pulsed around them. The shadows snarled, coiling angrily, but Edward and Lila stood resolute, a united front against the obscured past. As the words, the silence echoed in his mind, the intensity escalated. Without another thought, Edward lifted the letter, letting it guide him toward the trunk. "We have to look inside." The trunk surged as if alive, demanding them to unlock its secrets. Edward reached for the latch, their hearts hammering in unison. Whatever lay inside would either save them or seal their fate. But as he unlatched it, a deafening roar erupted from the shadows, shaking the room. "Stop! You don't know what you're unleashing." They were out of time. With every fiber of his being, Edward yanked the trunk open, fear colliding with determination. The light spilled forth, enveloping everything, pulling them deeper into its secrets. "What awaits us?" Lila breathed, barely midnight air daring to escape her lips. That he didn't have the answer. But deep down, he understood the fight was just beginning. Would the truth liberate them from the past or plunge them into darkness? And as they stepped forward, they had one burning question above all: were they truly ready for the answers that could shatter everything they thought they knew? The trunk creaked open, splitting the air with a sound like the snapping of bones. A blinding light burst forth, spilling life into the darkened corners of the room. Edward squinted, his pulse thrumming loudly in his ears. What lay within? His stomach knotted with anticipation. Shadows flailed around them, flickering with indignation as if they too wanted access to whatever secrets the trunk harbored. "Step back!" Edward shouted, trying to shield Lila from the onslaught of darkness rushing towards the filament of light. The urge to flee prickled at his skin, but his feet felt glued to the ground. He couldn't abandon the chance to uncover the truth, from the brilliance, something shifted. An object hovered just above the bottom of the trunk. Edward leaned closer and gasped. It was a small, intricately carved box, its surface shimmering with what looked like embedded stones. They sparkled with colors he didn't recognize. "Is that it? Is that what your mom meant?" Lila asked, her voice a mix of awe and fear. Just as Edward reached for the box, the shadows surged with furious speed, attempting to obscure it. "No!" he yelled, stretching his hand toward the box. It was like reaching for a lifeline. With a burst of adrenaline, he grabbed it, and the moment he did, the shadows recoiled as if burnt. The lights in the room intensified, bathing them in brilliant colors and pushing back the darkness, revealing cracked walls and peeling wallpaper that told stories of times long past. The air crackled with energy. "Open it," Lila urged, her eyes wide. Edward's hand trembled as he fumbled for the clasp, which seemed to be a heavy metal contraption demanding respect. "What if it's a trap?" Edward hesitated, glancing back at the shadows. They writhed in fury, their whispers turning into a cacophony of despair. "What if everything gets worse?" The shadows snarled, "You'll unleash what you cannot control." The echo was haunting, a chilling reminder of their past trauma. A flicker of doubt pierced Edward's resolve, but amid the chaos, his mother's face flashed in his mind, her voice soothing yet insistent. "The truth is layered." This was it. He had to know. Gritting his teeth, he forced the clasp open. The box sprang free, revealing an array of old letters, photographs, and even a small locket that twinkled under the joyful light. Familiar faces stared back at him, family members he barely recognized, friends frozen in time. "What does it all mean?" Lila breathed, peering over his shoulder. As Edward began to sift through the letters, a chilling realization took root. They weren't just any letters, they were correspondence between his parents, detailing arguments about things he had never understood. Tension seeped from the pages. Painful truths lurked behind every line. Then he located one that caught his breath. The ink was smudged, but a few words tore through the haze of confusion. "Forgive me." "What? What does it say?" Lila pressed, leaning closer. Edward's stomach sank. "This one," he murmured, "it's about a betrayal." Suddenly, the light dimmed, flickering uncertainly like a candle about to extinguish. The shadows seized the moment, lunging forward as they sensed an opening. "Destroy the box!" they screamed, their voices overlapping in a furious uproar. Real anxiety twisted in Edward's gut. Could the pain contained in the box outweigh the knowledge it promised? What if it was guarding secrets meant to stay buried? He looked at Lila, who faced the oncoming darkness with steadfast determination. "They want to stop us," he said, his voice hoarse. "But we can't turn back now." "Then let us uncover it together," she replied firmly, her hand finding his. As they gazed into each other's eyes, an understanding sparked. They were two halves of a whole, ready to face whatever awaited them. He took a deep breath and prepared to delve deeper into the secrets that could either shatter their reality or guide them toward the light, but just as they braced for the unknown, the box shuddered violently. "What's happening?" Lila cried out, the shadows advancing, their howls sharpened. Edward paled. The weight of impending doom settling heavily on his shoulders. "I think it's reacting." Panic surged as the shadows coiled tighter, ready to engulf everything. What truths were they about to unleash? And in that moment of dread, Edward understood one thing: the fight was far from over. Had they made a deal with darkness they'd never escape? With trembling hearts, they steeled themselves for whatever lay beyond, knowing only that the truth could set them free, or make them prisoners of their past forever. The box rattled violently as Edward and Lila clung to it, their fingers barely able to maintain their grip. The shadows around them hissed, a raw, chilling sound that sent a shiver racing down Edward's spine. He could feel the energy of the room morphing, thickening as if they were at the center of a brewing storm. "What's inside?" Lila screamed over the rising din of voices, her fear palpable. "I don't know." Edward shot back, his thoughts a wild tangle. "We need to." Before he could finish, the box erupted open. Letters flew from the confines, swirling around them like leaves caught in a gale. The shimmering light flickered, casting eerie shapes on the walls, and for an instant, Edward saw his mother's face among the fray. "Mom! Focus, Edward!" Lila shouted, her grip on his arm tightening. She was pulling him back to the truth, to the present. The shadows surged, dark figures writhing angrily, attempting to blot out the radiant light of the letters. "No more running!" Edward bellowed, finally finding his courage. He had come too far to let the weight of old sorrows drown him now. "We face this together." With renewed resolve, he snatched a letter from the air and read hastily. The words were a chaotic jumble, but one line pierced through the noise: a name. "Sophia. I knew her." Lila gasped, her eyes wide. "She was my grandmother's sister." Confusion clouded Edward's mind. How could this be? The shadows shrieked, their angry whispers threatening to drown out any semblance of understanding. "You don't know what you're tampering with," they shouted in unison. "The past is buried for a reason. I can't just ignore this," Edward exclaimed, his voice rising. He could feel the dark tendrils reaching out, clawing for the secrets that he had unearthed. The letters spun wildly, and a picture landed at their feet. Edward's stomach dropped. It was a photograph of his mother, standing beside a woman who looked eerily like Lila, her smile vibrant and free. "Where was this taken?" Lila whispered, kneeling to pick it up. The shadows recoiled momentarily, the light from the photograph causing them to hesitate. I think it was from a family reunion," Edward stammered, processing the revelation. "But why is Sophia here with her?" "The reunion," Lila muttered, her breath quickening. "It was supposed to be a day of unity. But something must have happened. There was a falling out, and I heard whispers." A surge of desperation surged within Edward. "What whispers?" But before she could respond, the box heaved again, a compulsion tugging at Edward's hands. He had to find the source of the fear. "It's all connected," he shouted, feeling overwhelmed by the urgency. I think we have to find more letters. There's something here," Lila cried, pulling another letter from the storm and reading. "Edward, listen. This one mentions a secret meeting in the woods. It bears a date. The day everything fell apart." The air crackled with tension. The shadows seemingly darkened, their forms converging, intensified by this revelation. They honestly seemed to feed on the fear radiating from both Edward and Lila, hungry to reclaim what the light threatened to expose. The shadows roared, a wall of sound crashing all around them. "Leave. You don't belong here." But neither Edward nor Lila intended to be scared off. "We're not leaving until we understand," Edward shouted defiantly. "What if the truth doesn't set us free?" Lila whispered, her voice trembled. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Edward's mind, but he pushed it away. The swirling shadows coiled menacingly, seeming almost to take form. Were they the manifestations of pain from times long past? As they grappling for the remnants of the letters, one last letter suddenly landed in his hand, as if it had been waiting. Its envelope was translucent, trembling with an otherworldly light. He felt a jolt surge through him. "What now?" Lila asked, both hopeful and afraid. "Whatever it is," he replied, "we're about to find out." The room filled with a furious cacophony, the shadows tightening their grasp. Edward glanced at Lila, and they both hesitated one last time. One last push. Together, she affirmed. As Edward tore the letter open, the lights snapped off, plunging them into a suffocating darkness. But in that moment of vulnerability, he recognized one chilling fact: some secrets, once uncovered, can alter the very fabric of their lives. What had they just awakened? Edward. Lila's voice cut through the darkness, echoing with an urgency that shattered the silence. Do you feel that? It's changing. And, with that tremor of uncertainty, the shadows surged forth, hungry for the light as they prepared to unleash their fury. The darkness hung like a heavy curtain, thick and suffocating. Edward's heart raced, pounding against his chest as an overwhelming dread closed in around him. He couldn't see Lila, couldn't even make out his own hands. The silence was deafening, interrupted only by the faint rustle of the shadows echoing their hunger, their rage. Lila. His voice broke, churned with anxiety. Panic twisted his insides. I'm here. She called out, her voice a lifeline in the void. Stay close. The weight of the shadows pressed heavier. Edward could feel their presence, like icy fingers tracing up his spine. He fought against the terror clawing at him, reaching for any glimmer of hope. But what hope lay in secrets long buried? Edward, the letter. Lila's urgent whisper sliced through the haze. What did it say? He fumbled in the dark, his fingers brushing against the fragile envelope. I don't know, I haven't seen it. Open it. We need to know. With trembling hands, Edward tore at the envelope, heart hammering loudly in his ears. The soft rustle of the letter slipping free sent a shiver through him. The moment felt monumental. As he spread the letter open, a radiant light pulsed from within. The small flicker grew, illuminating the darkness around them in ghostly hues. Shadows twitched as they recoiled from the encroaching warmth. It says. Edward's voice faltered, eyes wide with astonishment. It talks about the woods, but there's a warning. There was a ritual, a bond. A bond? Between who? Lila urged, gripping his arm tightly. It speaks of Sophia, he inhaled sharply, breath hitching. And my mother. They had a pact, Lila. Something to keep the darkness at bay. A chill slithered through the air. The shadows writhed, their angry whispers escalating into a roar. Break the bond. You must leave. The murmurings hissed, their voices intertwining like a cacophony of nightmares. You will regret this. No. We need to find out why. We can't. Before Edward could finish, a deafening sound erupted around them like thunder crashing within the walls. The shadows surged forward in a chaotic frenzy, they swirled like a living storm. Edward had never felt such malevolence before. The energy was palpable, almost suffocating. Lila, we have to stand strong. He shouted, fighting against the seething darkness. Focus on the light. Together, they stepped forward, shrouded in an illuminating aura emanating from the letter. Just then, a vision exploded in Edward's mind. Flickering memories danced wildly, echoes of laughter, a picnic by a lake, a promise made beneath the moonlight. Edward. Lila's voice broke through, urgent and piercing. What are you remembering? I think Sophia and my mom knew the woods held danger. They tried to protect us. He gasped, realization crashing over him. The shadows writhed and clawed at the sides of their light, screeching in rage. You must not uncover the past. It's too late. He cried back at them, resolve hardening in his chest. We demand the truth. The letter flared brighter, illuminating a path that stretched into the darkness. An intoxicating warmth enveloped them, momentarily staving off the cold that threatened to consume. What now? Lila's eyes narrowed, determination washing over her features. With a deep breath, Edward stepped toward the light, still grasping the letter. We find the woods. We confront whatever they tried to hide. As they stepped forward, the shadows screamed, a primal sound that vibrated in the air, rumbling like an approaching storm. Stop. You're meddling with things beyond your comprehension. But Edward and Lila pushed onward, hearts pounding in rhythm with the pulsing light surrounding them. The shadows lashed out but retreated, unable to breach the growing warmth that radiated from their bonded strength. would their newfound courage uncover the buried secrets that lay ahead, or had they merely awakened a force far more sinister than they could imagine? "Edward," Lila whispered, squeezing his hand, "are we ready for this?" As the woods loomed before them, dark and foreboding, Edward felt an undeniable pull, a bond. Stronger than fear. "We have to be." In that moment of silence before the storm, as they took their first step into the abyss, Edward couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. Something watched them, waiting what lay lurking in the shadows of the past. What force had they set into motion? The air thickened as Edward and Lila stepped into the woods, an ancient presence wrapping around them like a heavy fog. Shadows danced maliciously in the fading light, clawing at their resolve. It felt as though the trees whispered secrets, their gnarled branches twisting like fingers reaching out to snatch them into the dark. What do we do now?" Lila's voice trembled, uncertainty slipping in like a thief. Edward scanned their surroundings, the soft glow from the letter guiding their path. "We stick to the light." "It must mean something," he replied, trying to keep his mounting fear at bay. But as the shadows shifted and pooled at their feet, panic skittered just beneath his skin. Suddenly, a rustle in the underbrush propelled Edward forward. The letter throbbed in his hand, as if it sensed something unseen. "Lila," he warned, voice low. And then the shadows surged. Dark tendrils lunged, curling around their ankles before slashing upwards, desperate to ensnare them. "Run!" Edward yelled, yanking Lila away just as cold fingers brushed against him. Heart racing, they darted through the trees, branches whipping by like angry spirits. The deeper they went, the more alive the woods felt, swirling with energy and dread. "There has to be a way to break this," Edward shouted, his voice losing strength. Still gripping his hand, Lila glanced back, her face stricken with fear. "What if what if it's too strong?" Before Edward could answer, the shadows exploded before them. From the darkness leaped a figure, tall and cloaked, its eyes like burning coals. "You dare trespass?" A voice hissing with age and malice slithered through the night. They stumbled back, frozen in terror, the flickering light illuminating the figure momentarily. It was the embodiment of the woods, a keeper of its darkest secrets. Edward's throat constricted. "We're not here to harm anyone." But the figure only laughed, a chilling sound that echoed around them. "Foolish children. You awaken what should rest. The pact is sacred, and yet, here you stand." "Sacred?" Lila spat out, her voice rising in defiance. "You mean cursed. Why can't you just let us go?" The shadowy form leaned in closer, and Edward felt an oppressive weight settle on him, suffocating and dark. "Because you possess what was meant for this world. Only through your sacrifice can the cycle be broken." "Sacrifice? What do you want from us?" Edward's voice cracked, desperation clawing at him as he staggered back. He could feel the darkness palpable in the back of his mind, gnawing at his thoughts. "Your demise will seal the pact. Your mother and Sophia never intended for you to know. You were meant to live blissfully unaware." Lila's grip tightened on Edward's arm, resolve shining in her eyes. "No. We will not become sacrifices. We're breaking this bond." The woods responded with a howl of rage, and the figure's source twisted, darkness spilling from it like smoke. "You don't understand what you're dealing with." But Edward's heart was a drum in his chest, a steady pulse defying the chaos. "Then teach us. Tell us how we can put an end to this." Suddenly, a shattering flash of light erupted from the letter, pushing back the shadows for an instant. "Write your names," it commanded, the voice echoing from the other side. "Create the bond anew, or face eternal torment." "Edward!" Lila screamed as shadows lunged toward them. The air felt electric, time stretching thin. "Do it!" he shouted, scrambling to his feet, blood pounding in his ears. He ripped a shard of bark from a nearby tree, his mind racing with possibilities. "We can rewrite this." Then, He began to etch his name, each letter a defiant mark against the darkness, carving a path forward. Lila followed suit, her fingers darting nimbly, imbuing the letters with a fierce determination. As they worked, the shadows writhed in agony, their screams growing louder. Would their names empower the light or call forth the darkness anew? What price would they pay for the truth? An unearthly roar shattered the night, vibrating through Edward's bones. Whatever force loomed ahead, they were running out of time. Would they emerge unscathed, or would the shadows claim them for eternity? Edward's fingers trembled as he etched his name deeper into the bark. Each letter felt like a breakthrough, a break from the chains that had bound him to this tormented past. Lila's presence was a balm against the growing chaos. She scribbled her name beside his, determination in her eyes. The moment they finished, the air thickened, swirling with an energy that seemed to resonate between them. Suddenly, a blinding light burst forth from the letters they had inscribed, illuminating the woods in a kaleidoscope of colors. The figure of darkness recoiled, its features twisting with pain and rage. "You will regret this," it screeched, but the shadows around them began to dissipate, curling back into the earth as if being called home. Then came the sound, a deep rumbling echoing through the trees. The ground shuddered beneath their feet, and the trees trembled as if shaking off decades of secrets. Lila grasped Edward's arm tightly, her eyes wide with fierce will and resolute hope. "This is it," she shouted, urgency blooming in her voice. "Whatever happens, we stand together." "Together!" Edward shouted back, feeling strength surge within him. The light expanded, pushing against the darkness as though it were a tidal wave crashing through the woods. With a blinding flash, the shadows were torn asunder, revealing a divine presence. It was not just the woods or their dark keeper. It was a vision, a memory unraveling like a finely spun thread. The image of Edward's mother emerged from the light. She stood, radiant and alive, her features illuminated by the same warmth that radiated from their bond. "Edward!" she called, her voice a soothing balm wrapped in love. "You have done well. You've rewritten your fate." Tears streamed down Edward's cheeks as he reached for her, aching with the need to embrace her warmth. "Mom! I thought I lost you forever." "You have the strength to guide these souls to peace," she said, eyes shining. "You have the key to unlock their bonds. Remember the promise made to Sophia and me. It's time to let go of the anger and pain the past holds." Edward felt the weight of responsibility, the truth settling around him like the embrace he missed so dearly. The shadows writhed, still agitated, but he held firm to Lila's hand, anchoring himself amidst the tumult. "Join us," they pleaded in a shriek, shadows zigzagging through the light like frenetic tendrils. Edward could see the anguish etched in their forms. These were not merely spirits of hatred, they were lost souls, entangled in grief and regret. "You cannot control us," one of the shadows roared, lunging at them. "Stop!" Lila cried, stepping forward. "This isn't a fight. We come to heal, to forgive. We can release you." Her words held power, resonating deeply within the air thick with sorrow. The shadows hesitated, their malevolence wavering. Edward took a deep breath, knowing he had to push through this thin veil between worlds. "You were trapped in pain, but now you can choose peace," he called out, voice steady and clear, fueled by vigilante love. Slowly, the shadows began to tremble, as if their essence sought the warmth of forgiveness. "We are bound by rage and fear," they whispered, voices like rustling leaves. "Let us be free," his mother urged softly from beside him. "Let go of the anger that holds you back. Choose to move on." As those words hung in the air, Edward felt a shift. The shadows quaked with uncertainty, their darkness swirling like fog driven by a gentle breeze. One by one, they began to break away, seeking the light that promised solace. "Trust us," Lila said, mirroring the hope that surged through Edward. In that moment, the shadows slipped away, transforming as they departed, shimmers of light breaking from their dark bodies, rising toward the heavens. Edward gasped, heart swelling with a mix of relief and trembling joy. A soft lull enveloped the woods, a harmonious whisper echoing through the trees. "Thank you," their voices reverberated like a melody drifting away. "You set us free." With each passing moment, Edward felt the burden lift from his heart, leaving an expanse of hope behind. As silence settled like fallen leaves, the light surrounding him faded, leaving only a warm glow where shadows had once loomed. "Mom," he breathed, turning toward her, but she was no longer there. Instead, the forest stood tranquil, reflecting the warmth of newfound clarity. Lila squeezed his hand tightly. "We did it," she said, her eyes sparkling. "We helped them find peace." "Yeah," Edward replied, voice thick with emotion. "And we found our own along the way." They stood there, enveloped by the serenity, savoring the moment of stillness after a storm. The weight of grief began to dissolve, replaced by a flicker of hope. Edward turned to Lila, gratitude washing over him. "I couldn't have done this without you." Before they could say another word, the first light of dawn swept through the trees, casting a golden hue across the ground. It felt like a fresh start, a new chapter unfolding before them. "We've released the past," Edward said softly, the warmth spreading through his chest like the morning sun. "And now, we can build our future." As the first rays of sunlight broke through the branches, Edward and Lila stepped forward hand in hand, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, unburdened by shadows of sorrow. The mansion stood behind them, a symbol now transformed, just like them. With every step into the future, Edward understood the shadows would forever be a piece of history, but they wouldn't define him. He had the power to shape his destiny, and now, he walked toward the light, where hope and love forever thrived, and as they left the woods behind, they both knew this was just a triumph. It was the beginning of something beautiful. Now go ahead and take action. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help others see this journey. And be sure to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what happened next. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means the world.